Both of them needed more time. Hitler signed this non-aggression pact for a little bit of time, just like Stalin. On 23rd of August 1939, the USSR and the Third Reich signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, dividing Eastern Europe into German and Soviet spheres of influence. Only 1 week later, on 1st of September, the Wehrmacht crossed the Polish border. The United Kingdom and France was expecting the Poles to resist till spring of 1940. Stalin had a similar anticipation. However, German troops managed to encircle Warsaw in just 2 weeks. Later, the USSR joins the invasion, and Poland capitulates. Soviet and German armies linked up in Poland and turned their back to each other. Stalin pressured the Baltic states into submission while preparing for invasion of Finland. Hitler had even bigger plans. Operation codenamed Case Yellow or Manstein Plan was being prepared to invade Benelux and France. Before that, Germany had to secure Denmark and Norway for natural resources. Both of them needed more time. Soviets underestimated Finland and lost immense amount of manpower and resources. Eventually, they failed to establish a Finnish-Soviet regime, but managed to secure Leningrad. Hitler, on the other hand, hit Denmark and Norway simultaneously. Denmark surrendered in 5 hours, while Norway resisted, thanks to Allied help. On 10th of May 1940, Germany attacked France and Benelux. This time even German high command was surprised by the level of success. Following the Case Yellow, Panzer Group Kleist reached English Channel encircling 400,000 men in Dunkirk. The British managed to evacuate 330,000 men from Dunkirk while leaving their equipment behind. The Germans turned back and broke the French lines before they could organize a meaningful defense. All was lost. It only took 6 weeks to take France. France was not Poland or Norway. Almost everyone in the world believed that the French army is one of the strongest. 6 weeks were enough to crush this power. Hitler's ally Mussolini attacked Greece and failed to succeed. Situation in Yugoslavia developed against Germany's interests. Both countries were capitulated by Germany. But this made Hitler lose the much-needed time and resources, which could be used somewhere else.
Frauen, unser series deutsches Volk, dein Führer in großen Kriege.
Soviets tried to contact the German Foreign Affairs, demanding an explanation for military movements occurring from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Soviet Ambassador Vladimir Dekhanozov intensively pushed for an answer. The answer was, Ribbentrop is out of Berlin and we cannot reach him. Just like Stalin, Dekhanozov also believed that reports on possible German attacks was a campaign of disinformation made by the British. Reports about 180 divisions placed near the German-Soviet border was ignored by the ambassador. Later, Dekhanozov was called to the Foreign Affairs. He immediately demanded explanations for events happening near the German-Soviet border. Dekhanozov started reading a note, demanding reassurances from the Nazi government. Ribbentrop stood up and interrupted him. "We invited you for a meeting for very different reasons." Of course, he didn't openly declare war. The German Reich is forced to take military measures due to serious military buildup on the eastern borders. It was a surprise for sure. Stalin thought this attack was orchestrated by several Nazi officers trying to provoke a war. Soviets lost 1,500 planes on the ground, while their defenses were being outrun on every front. The Soviet command started to understand the urgency of the situation and started to take countermeasures. Hermann Göring, the Minister of Aviation, did not believe those numbers. It was impossible to destroy so many enemy planes in a day. He ordered the Luftwaffe to survey the Soviet airfields. Germans assumed around 2,000 enemy planes were destroyed during the first day of invasion. But those numbers were likely higher. Soviet archival documents recorded 4,000 planes destroyed during the first 3 days of invasion. Germany achieved a total aerial supremacy over the Eastern Front. They only lost 63 planes. This is a 63.5 kill-to-death ratio, even impossible to achieve in Hearts of Iron 4. In couple days, Soviet High Command shook the confusion off themselves and tried to resist the invasion. Every time they tried to retreat behind the river and construct a defensive line, they realized German troops crossed those rivers before them. The Algava River was crossed so fast, Soviets had to abandon Baltic countries. Immense amount of Soviet troops were encircled in Białystok and Minsk. Fyodor von Bock, the commander of Army Group Center, asked for permission to bypass those encirclements in favor of advancing to Vitebsk and later to Moscow. This was refused by Hitler. In those battles, Soviets estimated 700,000 casualties were given. Modern estimate is 500,000 men. 4,800 tanks and 9,400 artillery pieces were destroyed or abandoned. Truly a big blow to the Western Command. Germans needed an even bigger encirclement to paralyze the Red Army. You can see on the map. As of late August, 6 armies with 50 divisions were outflanked by the Wehrmacht. This sparked a heated debate in the OKH. Some believed pushing for political center of the enemy and capturing it before the winter is vital, while Hitler believed that capturing Ukraine and annihilating 700,000 enemy troops were more important. Franz Halder had Guderian flown to Hitler in order to convince him to order the Wehrmacht to advance on Moscow. Unexpectedly, Guderian changed his mind and agreed with the dictator. Hitler ordered Guderian to regroup and advance south with Panzer Group 2. Panzer Group 1 and 17th Army would attack north to meet Guderian. General Zhukov, Chief of General Staff of the Red Army, stated that German success in Moscow and Leningrad is unlikely. Zhukov wanted to move 7 divisions from Moscow to Kiev front. Stalin disagreed, saying this would severely weaken the defense of Moscow. Zhukov stated that it was possible to transfer 9 fully equipped divisions from Far East within 2 weeks to strengthen these defenses. But Stalin expressed concern that the Far East would then be vulnerable to Japanese. Zhukov advised Stalin to retreat behind the Dnieper River. Then Stalin asked what would be the fate of Kiev. Zhukov's answer was abandonment. Stalin harshly disagreed and called General's words worthless. If you think Chief of General Staff is talking nonsense, dismiss me and send me to the front, said Zhukov. Stalin only agreed to this request of the general and appointed him to the reserve. As of 16th September, around 650,000 men were encircled in and around Kiev, later resulting in complete destruction of 43 Soviet divisions and the Soviet Southern Front. After consolidating the Southern Front, Hitler pushed to Moscow with everything he's got. Soviet defenses in Vyazma and Bryansk were pierced before the completion of defensive positions. 7 Soviet armies were encircled. Germany employed many divisions to eliminate those pockets. These forces could have been used in the offensive towards Moscow. Soviets lost around 1 million troops in those battles. 250,000 women and teenagers worked building the trenches and anti-tank moats around Moscow, moving 3 million cubic meters of earth with only manual labor. The weather changed on October 7th. First snowfall turned the earth into mud, restricting mobility of armed vehicles. Tanks, trucks, motorcycles, and even horses could not move. The army's advance was impossible. Logistical issues caused many problems such as lack of food, ammunition, and manpower. On November 7th, Stalin held a military parade in Moscow, increasing the morale.
Товарищи красноармейцы и краснофлотцы, командиры и политработники, рабочие и работницы, колхозники и колхозницы, работники интеллигентного труда, братья и сестры в тылу наших врагов, временно подпавшие под иго немецких разбойников, наши славные партизаны и партизанки, разрушающие тылы наших врагов.
While deciding to stay in Moscow, Stalin declared martial law. Wider implementation of T-34 tanks and Katyusha rocket launchers boosted the morale of the Soviet army. The German High Command expected the ground to freeze in a while. After that, movement of forces would be possible. However, this winter would be one of the coldest winters of the century. Temperatures reaching minus 40 degrees, causing more than 100,000 casualties from frostbite due to lack of winter clothing. Stavka moved 30 divisions from Far East to Moscow. Unlike what Stalin expected, Richard Sorge, a Soviet spy in Japan, informed him that Japan has no intentions of attacking Siberia. Some of those troops were well prepared for a combat in winter. In mid-November, Wehrmacht started the second stage of the offensive. On November 15th, German Panzer Group began their offensive towards Klin, where no Soviet reserves were available. Several days of intense combating later, Zhukov recalled in his memories that the enemy, ignoring the casualties, was making frontal assaults, willing to get to Moscow by any means necessary. Reportedly, Stalin asked Zhukov whether Moscow could be successfully defended and ordered him to speak honestly, like a communist. Zhukov replied that it was possible, but reserves were urgently needed. Eventually, the Axis offensive on Moscow stopped. Guderian wrote in his journal that the offensive on Moscow failed. We underestimated the enemy's strength as well as his size and climate. Fortunately, I stopped my troops on 5th of December. Otherwise, the catastrophe would be unavoidable. The Soviets pushed the Germans back, and multiple city battles later, the front line froze. December 26th. The horses have already been eaten. I would eat a cat. They say its meat also is tasty. The soldiers look like corpses or lunatics, looking for something to put in their mouth. They no longer take cover from Russian shells. They haven't got the strength to walk, run away, or hide. A curse on this war. In the winter of 1941-42, Hitler suffered severe casualties west of Moscow. But he was still convinced that he could defeat the Red Army, since most of Army Group Center had been rested and re-equipped. Hitler made the decision to attack the southern Soviet Union in the summer of 1942. Destroying Stalingrad's industrial potential and obstructing the Volga River, which is essential for linking central Russia with the Caucasus and Caspian Sea, were the first goals in the area. Lend-Lease shipments via the Persian corridor would also be disturbed if Stalingrad was taken. On July 23, 1942, Hitler expanded the campaign's objectives to include occupying Stalingrad, a city with immense propaganda value due to its name. The city's fall was intended to secure the northern and western flanks of the German advance on Baku, to capture its petroleum resources. Convinced that Moscow would be the primary target of the German onslaught, Stalin gave the defense of the Soviet capital first priority. The Soviet High Command started preparing for the summer campaign in March, following the conclusion of the winter counteroffensive in 41-42. Although Stalin desired a general offensive, he was dissuaded by Boris Shaposhnikov, Alexander Vasilevsky, and Georgy Zhukov. If I don't get the oil of Maikop and Grozny, then I must finish the war. Under the instructions of Fall Blau, or Case Blue, German Southern Army Group split into two, Army Group A and B. Group A would continue south to capture North Caucasian oil fields. Group B, consisting of Paul's 6th Army and Hoth's 4th Panzer Army, would push towards Stalingrad and Volga. Due to logistical and strategical issues, Blau started in late June instead of late May. Germans pushed the Red Army back and crossed the Don River. By 23rd of August, the 6th Army reached the outskirts of Stalingrad. Luftwaffe started bombing Stalingrad. Luftflotte 4 dropped 1,000 tons of bombs on 23rd of August. It was clear to me that the Battle of Stalingrad was of the greatest military and political significance. If Stalingrad fell, the enemy command would be able to cut off the south of the country from the center. We could lose the Volga, the important water artery, along which a large amount of goods flowed from the Caucasus. Stalin did not let the civilians leave the city, believing this would increase the amount of resistance. Thousands of civilians were being killed on a daily basis due to aerial and artillery assaults. Soviet Air Force was swept aside by the Luftwaffe. NKVD organized poorly army workers' militia. Those civilians often were sent to battle without a rifle.
I had been imagining what war was like. Everything on fire, children crying, cats running about, and when we got to Stalingrad it turned out to be really like that, only more terrible.
Soldiers started calling this War of the Mice. Everywhere, in the sewage, rubbish, destroyed houses, everywhere was hiding an enemy soldier. Initial advance was pretty successful for the Germans. However, it was a costly one. Russians started attacking during the nights. This was supposed to put an extra strain on the German soldiers' psychology. Some Soviet soldiers were thinking about deserting their units. They believed Germans were sending those soldiers back to their countries. A Tatar soldier left his unit. In the darkness of the city, he stumbled upon another Soviet regiment. Confusing them as German spies in Soviet uniforms, he confessed. There was no mercy for deserters. The Soviets were preparing a counter-offensive against the Germans. Operation Uranus was to pierce German lines from north and the south and surround Stalingrad. Operation began on November 19th, 1942. About 330,000 Axis soldiers, including Germans, Romanians, Italians, Croatians, all were trapped by the time of the encirclement. Extreme cold, hunger, frostbite. This is the conditions where the following letters were written. I was shocked when I saw the map. We are entirely alone, without help from outside. Hitler left us in the lurch. If the airfield is still in our possession, this letter may still get out. Our position is to the north of the city. The men of my battery have some inkling of it too. But they don't know. They don't know it as clearly as I do. So, this is what the end looks like. Hans and I will not surrender. Yesterday, after our infantry had retaken a position, I saw 4 men who had been taken prisoner by the Russians. No, we shall not go into captivity. When Stalingrad has fallen, you will hear and read it. And then you will know that I shall not come back.
I took out your picture once again and looked at it for a long time. I remember the experience we shared that lovely summer evening in the last year of peace. When we walked home through the blooming valley towards our house. When we found each other for the first time, only the voice of the heart spoke in us. Later, it was the voice of love and happiness. We talked about ourselves and about the future which lay before us like a many-colored carpet. And that gay carpet is no longer there, and the summer evening is no longer there, neither is the blooming valley, and we are no longer together. Instead of the carpet, there is now an endless white field. There is no more summer, but only winter. And there's no future, at least not for me, and consequently, not for you either.
Stalingrad, Massengrad, alle 7 Sekunden entdeckt ein deutscher Soldat. Stalingrad, Massengrad, alle 7 Sekunden.
Well, now you know that I shall never return. Break it into our parents gently. I am deeply shaken and doubt everything. I used to be strong and full of faith. Now I am small and without faith. I will never know many of the things that happen here. But the little that I've taken part in is already so much that it chokes me. No one can tell me any longer that the men died with the words Deutschland or Heil Hitler on their lips. There's plenty of dying, no question of that. But the last word is mother, or the name of someone dear, or just a cry for help. I've seen hundreds fall and die already, and many belong to the Hitler Youth, as I did. But all of them, if they still could speak, called for help or shouted a name which could not help them anyway.
It is easy to give good advice, but it just won't work the way you think it will. Liberation of nations. Nonsense. Nations remain the same. The rulers change. Bystanders will keep arguing for liberating the people from the respective rulers. The time to act was in 1932, you know that very well. or so that we let the moment go by. 10 years ago, the ballot will still have done the trick. Today, all it will cost you is your life.
I have written to you 26 times from this damned city, and you answered me with 17 letters. Now I shall write just once more, and never again. There, I said it. For a long time I thought about how I should formulate so faithful a sentence so that it would say everything and still not hurt much. I am saying goodbye to you, because since this morning, the issue is settled. I will not comment on the military situation in my letter. It is clear-cut and completely up to the Russians. The only question is how long we'll be around. It may last a few more days, or just few hours. Our whole life together is there for us to see. We have honored and loved each other and waited for each other now for 2 years. It is good that so much time passed. It has increased the anticipation of reunion, to be sure, but also in large measure helped to make us strangers. And time will have to heal the wounds of my not coming back. In January you will be 28. That is still very young for such a good-looking woman, and I am glad that I could pay you this compliment again and again. You will miss me very much, but even so, don't withdraw from other people. Let a few months pass, but not more. Gerhard and Klaus need a father. Don't forget that you must live for the children, and don't make too much fuss about their father. Children forget quickly, especially at that age. Take a good look at the man of your choice. Take note of his eyes and the pressure of his handshake, as was the case with us, and you won't go wrong. But above all, raise the children to be upright human beings who can carry their heads high and look everybody straight in the eye. I am writing these lines with a heavy heart. You wouldn't believe me if I said it was easy, but don't be worried. I'm not afraid of what's coming. Keep telling yourself, and the children also, when they have grown older, that their father was never a coward, and that they must never be cowards either.
Ich behaupten, das deutsche Volk wehrt sich gegen die totalen Kriegsmaßnahmen der Regierung.
The German army was destroyed. The regime got the news of encirclement on 16th of January. They described the Sixth Army's dire situation as our heroic troops who have been resisting enemy attacks from all sides. Goebbels wanted to use this tragedy to clump the people together. Stalingrad was made the center of attention. Radios and newspapers were ordered to publish specially created stories. Entertainment was restricted. The whole nation was supposed to mourn. After all this effort, the letter sent from Russia was telling the otherwise. Hitler gave Paulus, the commander of the Sixth Army, the rank of Field Marshal. The order was clear. Never before a Field Marshal was taken a prisoner. Hitler was indirectly ordering Paulus to fight to the end or end his life. On 31st of January, Friedrich Paulus surrendered to Soviets, probably the biggest disobedience to Hitler till that time. People around Hitler expressed how shocked he was after the surrender. Around 100,000 men was taken prisoner. 10,000 men chose not to surrender and fight to the end. Only around 5,000 men managed to come back to their house. At the end, Goebbels tried to enrage the German people and step up the war. He made his famous speech. Stalingrad was the biggest crack in Germany's 1,000-year empire plan. This plan ended up in an underground bunker in Berlin.